As the race for November 27 is starting to intensify, two political actors, the Namibia Economic Freedom Fighters, NEFF, and the Christian Democratic Voice, CDV, recently faced the wrath of the Electoral Act when they were deregistered as political parties with immediate effect. NEFF's two MPs and the one of CDV ceased being members of the August House, being the National Assembly. According to the Electoral Commission of Namibia, these two political parties failed to submit and publish audited financial statements as stipulated by the law. NEFF has, in the meantime, come out guns blazing as they appealed against the decision on the ECN. Tonight, we seek to untangle the intricate mechanics of the Electoral Act insofar as it relates to the establishment, registration, and deregistration of political parties and organizations. It is our official recommendation that you fasten your seatbelts for what promises to be an enthralling episode of the Wheels of Justice. Greetings, Namibia. My name is Daniel Nadunya. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. The wheels are officially in motion, and joining us for this evening's proceedings are two legal eagles who are no strangers to the platform. Mr. Alpheus Haufiku is a senior legal officer at ECN, and Mr. Thomas Andima, director at Thomas Andima and Company. Leonard Friends, welcome to the Wheels of Justice. Good to see both of you again back here.
Thank you, Daniel. Evening.
Perhaps, is there anything that we need to take care of before we start? Any preliminary issue? A disclaimer, maybe one of you is intending to deregister or register a political party or organization or association.
Yes, Daniel. Good evening, Namibians, and thank you, MBC, for having us. What I perhaps would like to as a preliminary issues, as Daniel always tried to put forth, is just to inform the Namibian people that the registration, general registration of voters is ongoing, and just to remind the Namibians that the days are really approaching. As you are aware, the registration will be ending on the 1st of August, and we would like to inform the Namibian people that there will be no extension. Please, let's go to registration points so that we make sure that we exercise our democratic right by having registered as voters. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Andima.
Yes, I think what we have is that opportunity and privilege to cast a vote. Cast your vote, and then you participated in whatever change or whatever remains status quo in the country.
Right. I think I should then also state that I'm yet to register, but I will surely, as a first thing tomorrow, go and register.
Please do.
Now, let's take it away. Chapter 4 of the Electoral Act, that is 5 of 2014, sets procedures and ways in which parties are to be registered and perhaps deregistered. Maybe Mr. Haufi could talk to us about that. In terms of that act, how are parties supposed to be established, registered, and maybe before we talk about deregistration?
Thank you for the question. The Electoral Act, as you rightly said, 5 of 2014, specifically section 135, make it clear as to when can a political party be established. And in that regard, a political party must have an objective to participate and promote election. It must be able to nominate somebody to participate in that election. And it must also be able to canvass votes. That are some of the objectives that really that will make you now to found a political party, because once your intention is to participate and promote election, that you have an idea of establishing the political party. Not only that, there are also requirements that you then need to meet for you to be registered as a political party. And those requirements are set out in terms of Section 136, that you need to obtain 500 supporters from minimum 7 regions of Namibia. You should be able to pay an amount of 25,000, a fee that you pay to revenue. And you also need then to have a constitution, a draft constitution. Those are the requirements that a person then need to submit to Electoral Commission of Namibia for us to consider the application for one to establish the political party.
Yes. Perhaps, Mr. Andima, maybe in addition to those requirements that political parties and organizations need to comply with, before basically you perhaps also take us through the Constitution, in what format and what should be fulfilled by that specific constitution of a political party?
You know, ever since we've been on this program, Wheels of Justice,
yes,
we always deal with the law. And I always and will always emphasize that whatever law, whatever organization, whatever you want to establish in the Republic of Namibia, you should first know what does the Namibian Constitution say, because no law, no rule, no whatever shall be in contravention of the Namibian Constitution. So that is why it is so important that before you establish a political party, which really plays a very important role in the peace and stability of the Namibian nation, you need to comply with these requirements. Especially take, for example, the constitution of the party. The aims and objectives, as it was narrated by Mr. Ufiku, is actually to determine whether is your party or this organization in compliance, or does it intend to establish the rule of law of the Namibian nation? Does it intend to uphold the peace and stability and safety and security of the Namibian nation? That is why it is really very important that these documents are required. Because remember, every political party, your objective should be to canvass, promote, and participate in the election. You must also make sure that your objectives and your approach is not in contravention of the Namibian Constitution. For example, me and you, we cannot establish a political party where we decide, okay, let's, the three of us, you know, I think the people need houses or the people need farms. Now we come up with an objective or the Namibian, or our constitution that says that we will engage in violence in obtaining houses or farms to restore to whoever we think is entitled to it. So that is why it is important that the constitution is provided, the objectives are provided to ensure that we do not contravene, or each party organization does not intend to contravene the Namibian constitution or the laws in compliance thereof, or does not intend to compromise the safety and security of the Namibian country.
Meaning the constitution of a political party is then used as a yardstick to determine whether these political parties' ethos and objectives are not in contravention with the supreme law of the country.
Exactly.
Yes, Daniel. What then? The Constitution, in fact, it must cover a number of factors,
yes,
that need to be analyzed whether they are contrary to the Namibian laws.
Right.
Once that is, if there is one provision in that particular constitution of intended or political party, then you are then assured that it will not go through with a registration, because you have to deal with the issues, and that is what we used to do. You know, in practice, you make sure that when you receive the draft constitution of a political party application, you go through it, and then you look at the provisions of the Electoral Act. What are the do's and don'ts? within the parameters of the law. Once that is in order, then it's only the time that you can give the proponent who are applying or applicant a go-ahead and looking at other requirements.
Right. So what circumstances then would attempt the ECN or would lead the ECN to reject an application for registration as a political party?
As I pointed out earlier, that the objective of a political party, of the application of the political party, one of them, you must make sure that you are going to participate and promote elections. If then your purpose of founding a political party is not to participate and promote election, then of course you are not supposed to apply, because of course that application will not go through. If any of your objective is against the Namibian laws or Namibian constitution, if to put it in that way, then again, of course, your application will not be accepted. In addition to other requirements, whether your constitution is discriminatory in nature, once you are discriminating in terms of color, economic status, whatever the case may be, then of course we'll have a serious problem with your application.
Now, it may also appear to me then that ECN or the Act provides for a very thorough scrutiny of applications for registration as political parties or organizations seeking to participate in this democratic process called election. But does the Act provide for the same scrutiny after the party is registered? What happens if a political party decides to amend its constitution, and where in its constitution the amendment contravenes the constitution of the country?
Thank you for that very important question. The political party's constitution remain in the record of the ECN. And if you change it without informing or availing the copy of the changed or proposed change to the Electoral Commission of Namibia, that's an offense. You have to make sure that any change that you want to effect to your political party constitution, you should avail it to Electoral Commission of Namibia for us to go through again. The original one, we keep it, and if you have an amendment, intention to amend it, you then have also to inform the Electoral Commission of Namibia.
Mr. Dima, would the ECN have power to reject an amendment of the constitution of an independent political party?
I think one should actually be proud to say that the Namibian law or the setup is of such a nature that there is almost no arena that is not regulated. And not even deviating. I just want to put it in perspective, like, political parties are just the same as, like, for example, like a law firm that is regulated by the Law Society.
Yes.
So that if you contravene some of the provisions or what is expected of you by the Law Society, then you must know that you might face a challenge where your fidelity certificate is revoked and so on.
Yes.
So the same also just applies to the Electoral Commission, that where a political party, you cannot just on your own decide that let me just fool the ECN for now, for upon registration,
yes,
and thereafter internally we just have our own meeting behind or under a tree or behind our own office there and decide that now we're gonna do what we want to do that is not in compliance or that is not contravening the Namibian constitution. So you have to go back to the regulatory body and say that, listen, this was our objectives and now we intend to change. And that is why it is so very important, because the ECN should see that what are the objectives of this party? No, we want to wage war against housing, for example, where we say that, no, we have waited for so long and so on. Now we intend to invoke violence to achieve what we think we are entitled to. And that is where the ECN comes in and say, no, hold your guns. Now you are in contravention of the laws of the Republic of Namibia. So we as the regulatory body, we object to that. And we will give you at least audience to rectify A, B, C, and D. And should you not do that, then you will face the wrath of the law.
Yes. How would that scenario, would ECN deal with a situation where a political party registered and, of course, with its constitution having found to be in line with the supreme law of the country and all other enabling laws of the country, but upon taking on governance, say maybe that political party makes it and becomes a ruling party, it then decides to legislate contrary to what is provided by the Constitution. ECN then says, no, that's not our part. It's for aggrieved parties to approach the relevant courts, or what happens in that case? I'm speaking in line with, in terms of Section 135, the objectives of a political parties or organization may not provide discriminatory practices contrary to the law. Now, in light of recent constitutional developments, if we speak of the case of Dihashu and others, and of recent the Dowsab case, and if we are to see the legislators trying to legislate in a way that contravenes what is set in the Constitution, does ECN have a part to play in that regard?
Well, Daniel, what we need to understand is any law to be made in this country must be checked against the supremacy of our Constitution. There can be no law in this country that is above the Constitution. Unfortunate, Article 1, subsection 6, sub-article 6 of the Namibian Constitution made it that the Constitution is a supreme law. If there would be somebody coming up with a different law that is against the Constitution, then that law in itself is good as if it's not a law.
Right.
And therefore, if any issue that is against the Constitution, it will be regarded as not a lawful law.
But does ECN have a part to play in that? Can ECN say, no, look, this is a party-sponsored bill, but it goes contrary to what your party constitution says?
ECN must work in parameter of the Electoral Act and the Namibian Constitution.
Right.
Whatever we have to do as Electoral Commission of Namibia, it must be guided by those instruments, and particularly the Namibian Constitution. Whether you come up with your law, I want to reiterate it, whether you're a ruling party, that you want to come up with a different law, then unless you have to discard the Constitution first. Other than that, which we don't want to think about it, because that will not be a good thing in our democracy that we are enjoying, you and I today. And I think we want the next generation after us to enjoy the good constitution that we have of this country. Yeah.
Mr. Andima.
Yes. I would also want to just emphasize on the fact that I think the ECN also has, as it correctly indicated, that it has to operate within its parameters and what is expected of them, and the law at large also. And I would emphasize on the fact that we indicated that the parties should provide their objectives in their constitution. Now, there is a difference in what is contained or entrenched in the constitution and in their objectives, and then ways that is made out there, let me say at rallies or at campaigns and so on.
Yes.
So even if at the campaigns or at the rallies somebody stand up and say that, we had enough of Mr. Nadunya, or his tribe, or his people, or his region, and so on. But as long as the Constitution and its objectives is in compliance with the requirements of the ECN, then there is nothing that one can do primarily, unless the offended party or aggrieved party decide and say that, no, I would rather approach the courts to enforce my rights.
And maybe just to, amplify what you were saying.
Yes.
The Electoral, Act also made a provision that there shall be a code of conduct for
Right.
political parties and organizations, registered political party and organizations.
Yes.
And if individual within a political party is also going contrary to what is stated in their constitution, that also has a consequence.
Right.
They have to make sure that whatever individual within a party are doing, they should also adhere to the objective that are stated within their constitution. Yes.
Perhaps now, it may seem as if, Mr. Andima, the ECN only controls or has some certain power over what is submitted to it. But outside that submission, it's for other aggrieved parties to basically vindicate their rights. Is that the understanding?
Yes, I think to be realistic, one approaches the watchdog, for example, the ECN, and say,
Yes.
listen, I feel my rights are aggrieved in this certain way because ABC said A, B, C, and D. And then obviously the ECN will see that where does our rights start and where does it end, or where does our powers start and where does it end, and what evidence or what proof do we have for us to take this decision and so on. So actually, at the end of the day, the ECN might come out and say that, listen, we don't see any contravention of your rights and so on, but should you not be satisfied with our decision or with our decision, you still have the right to approach the necessary courts and say, but listen, I feel my rights are aggrieved and so on. The ECN, being the watchdog, is saying that, listen, that is outside their powers and so on, because it's not something that is within their mandate, and the court is always there to pronounce itself. Remember, because the courts are always there to interpret and make laws where the laws are vague, or to make declaratory orders to say that as much as you thought that you were not, you didn't have any local standing to entertain A, B, C, and D, actually you should have. And then the ECN from there knows, now from there onwards knows that, no, actually we do have powers to entertain some of these complaints or some of these aggravations.
Mr. Ufiku, applications for political parties, for registration of political parties, published, or basically is the public allowed to basically scrutinize some of the documents, the constitutions of those political parties seeking to be registered for a possible objection before it is registered?
Daniel, the registration of a political party is a process.
Right.
The process, as I indicated earlier on, it starts with obtaining the names of supporters who are supporting you from different regions for your application to go through. Now, once we have all the requirements, we then, the commission then approve the application that it must be placed and noticed in the Gazette.
Right.
And the purpose of that is for the public to object within a period of 30 days. That perhaps, because you are bringing these names to the commission, saying Nadunya signed the declaration that is supporting the creation of my political party. In the meantime, Nadunya is saying, no, I never supported this application. That is a fraud. And the individual has a right to object to it. Hence, these are some of the process that we verify as well to make sure that within that period of 30 days, individual has a right to object to the registration of a political party.
Can one also object based on the fact that they find the political party's constitution or draft constitution to be in violation of certain rights?
Of course. Of course, because I mean, it is also one of the requirements that what your objective should also not be to advance only a certain region or a certain part of the country or a certain tribe or a certain group of people or in violation of a certain group, sex group and so on. So obviously, and that is why I always say that I think in Namibia we are so fortunate that all these elements of the, I would rather say the ultimatum rule, that, you know, everybody have a chance to view their, to be heard and bring and air out their concerns or to agree with whatever is out there and so on. And that is actually the importance of publishing in the government gazettes and so on, so that everybody knows that, you know, you have a right to object to the following if you are not in agreement therewith.
Yes, but Leonard Friends, now we know that Section 135 still prohibits political advocacy on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnic origins, religion, creed, or social and economic status. But we've also seen in an independent Namibia where some political parties are born out of social issues such as land or economic issues. How do we balance, perhaps, how do we balance the need for organizations or political party to perhaps address this through that same democratic process, but at the same time be in compliance with Section 135?
Daniel, the political formation is a dynamic of social change. Now, when, say for instance, the political party is, the cause of it is because they have an issue with the land distribution.
Yes.
That's an issue that ignites them to found the political party.
Yes.
But what we need to understand within that context is a political party will not only need to have members that they don't have land. That's just an ideology that they want to make sure that they promote the issue of equal distribution of land. But when it comes to membership, it should not be limited to those who don't have land. That will then amount to discrimination, and that is what is prohibited in the law. But the issue that they want to deal with, that's fine. Right. I mean, we have the formation when this country started with the struggle of independence. It was with the exploitation of the people, even abused at workplaces. And they put effort together to say enough is enough. Right. That was not an issue of saying that's only for the workers. Those who are also supported by these workers, they joined, and that they were welcome.
Yes, Leonard Friend, thank you so much. I just want us to engage our viewers out there. You are still watching The Wheels of Justice. On the menu tonight, the establishment, registration, as well as deregistration of political parties and organizations. When we return, we'll grant you the opportunity to seek counsel from our esteemed panel for any relevant interventions, so stay tuned. Welcome back, Namibia. Remember, you need not ever miss out on any of our episodes, even and especially if you are outside the borders of the Republic. Download the NBC Plus application to enable you to remain part of every session in real time. Also, this episode will air on National FM at 1900 hours, that is tomorrow, Monday. Having said that, our telephone lines are now open for your questions and contribution. The number in the studio is 061-291-3339. That is 291-3339. Make it brief, sweet, and to the point, respectfully. Your calls are now welcome. Let's continue with that point. Now, if my political party aims to deal with the question of equal or unequal land distribution, and I then say in the Constitution or in my Constitution as a political party and say we seek to repossess land without compensation. Will that then pass the test of our constitution? You will answer this question once we hear from Anytime on the line from Tumeb. Good evening.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Nadunya. How are you?
Good, thank you. Your question or contribution, sir?
Yeah, my question and contribution stems from what has been presented. Let me greet the and also the viewers all over the country. Yeah, my question is, some of us, we are not political pundits, and what has elongated from the presentation from the panel is, what if the objectives of the political party that wants to register, and even the constitution, political party constitution, does not meet the requirements on several occasions, attempting to meet the requirements? What is next then, after paying that 25,000? The other thing is this. It elongates to me that most of us, as we are not political pundits, we don't have information surrounding how one can register the political party, the requirements. How can they make this information be available to the public who are aspiring politicians? I'm seeing why can't they introduce a civic education in school so that even the youth can learn from this, and then they are aware of this information? Other than if they could not get time to listen to this, how could we be aware of this information? Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
Right, Mr. Aufiko.
Yes, maybe I should start with the question of Master Anytime. I think I agree with him that perhaps we need to make sure that the issue of political parties are included in the school curriculum, maybe for us to create a political awareness. But beside that, we also, as Electoral Commission of Namibia, have the section within the Electoral Act as well that we have voter and civic education officers in all 14 regions. And that in itself is sufficient for them as well to create awareness to the Namibian people with regard to establishment and the registration of political parties. But maybe, Daniel, I wanted to deal with your question that you were asking.
Yes.
With regard to the issue of Section 35.
Yes. Before we come to that, can we hear from Ishmael from Vendu? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Nadunya.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I ran from the sitting room to the room, so my voice might be not clear.
No, it's well clear.
Okay.
Right.
I only have 2 questions. What are the requirements when it comes to the independent candidate? Secondly, the second question is that I remember there was an objection registered to the ECN on a certain political formation party, with the evidence presented to the ECN where some names were duplicate or appearing more than twice, and some is for people that have already passed on. But in proceeded registering this political formation. And I think on the side of the ECN, when they now publish or give this information of the intent now, where the public is now given a chance to see whether this to object. It's like they release it after the time has lapsed. Are you getting that point?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember even recently there was a group of people who went to object when they saw their names appearing in two for political formations, and they were told that the time has already lapsed. So we don't know now. Maybe it's us who are not on the lookout. Maybe we don't go on the website of the ECN, or maybe the ECN is also not publishing these formations on time for us to see.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Let's have your questions answered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Ofigo.
Yes, maybe I should deal with his first question with
Yes.
regard to the requirement of the independent candidate.
Yes.
Independent candidate is also provided in the law, if I'm not mistaken, Section 73 of the Electoral Act. For one to be independent candidate in our system, as we are aware, Namibia has only two electoral systems, which is the party list and then first past the post. That is with the National Council or regional election, whereas the party list is work for National Assembly and the local authority.
Right.
Now, the independent candidate you can then only challenge with the presidential and the regional elections.
That's for regional council.
Yeah, just for regional council.
Right.
Now, the requirement there is just that an individual who wants to stand as a presidential candidate, you need to obtain 500 supporters, registered supporters from 14 regions of our country.
Right.
And then, in addition to that, you need to be nominated by 2 registered individuals.
Should the 5,000 supporters be evenly distributed? 500 only?
Yes.
Should
from
they
14
be,
regions.
Okay. Should they be, is it 500 from each region?
Yes.
Okay.
500 from 14 regions.
Right.
And then you must then also, your nomination must also then supported by 2 registered candidates that they did not support any other independent candidate again.
Ever?
Ever. They should just nominate you. They can't nominate Nadunya and then nominate Ofigo again. And then you should then also pay. There is a payment as well there of a 10,000 Namibian dollar. Those are all the requirements for one to stand as an independent candidate.
But somebody that nominated Nadunya and nominates Andima after 5 years.
No. We are talking about for a specific
election year.
Yes.
Right.
Election year. That's what a person needs to do. And with regard to the second question, with regard to the objection, unfortunately, the law as it is currently, the objection is only provided that once the notice is placed in the Gazette, within a period of 30 days, individual can object to the registration of a political party. However, if you object after that period, then of course that will be considered as it's not an objection because that's beyond the prescribed time frame.
Right.
But of course, that will not be also take the fact away that you have an issue with the registration of a political party. Remember, it's the individual who signed the declarations. We are not there as ECN. If you have your fact that you never signed that declaration, then that is fraud, which is a criminal case.
Then you can take a different avenue.
Exactly.
Mr. Andima.
Yes, of course. I just want to indicate that, remember, in whatever we do, we have to have certainty as to the birth of a certain process and the death of such a process. So if this avenue is left indefinitely, then I mean, come on, we might have elections, and then even after the elections is when somebody decided to come back and say, actually, I was never party to that, or I never consented to that, or I never signed that. So that is why there are time frames attached to this, so that we know that at least each individual have been given that platform or that audience to air their objections. But should we be out of time also, although there are other avenues that you can explore, but at least within that time frame is when you have to act. Otherwise, you are unfortunate.
Yes.
And I also want to go back also to...
Just hold your thoughts there. Let's hear from Abdul from Windhoek. Good evening.
Good evening, my brother. How are you doing tonight?
Good, thank you. Your question or contribution, briefly say.
Both sides. Yeah, good evening to your represented members and the rest of Namibia who are listening. First question is that goes like this. I want to know from the commissioner of Namibia, Commissioner ECN, when people are giving conduct of accepting what they have been given to sign in, and you find some, as you say, some some of the other side, the opponent side, if I can say the IPC or other parties, like the last election was happening, there was a little bit of chaos in the ECN when to sign the code of conduct, and then some members from the IPC or the other parties are fondly attacking the ruling parties members. That and then the ECN was telling them that each one must sign these things, because once it's signed, whether the ruling party or any other party must go beyond what ECN has been given to sign. If you go against that, what is the consequences? First question, what is the consequences? Has to fall in certain political parties. And the second question here is that the code of dress, I saw many parties used to wear their code of conduct when they go to the election polling stations. What the ECN has to do on educating certain members, political parties, not to adhere the uniforms of their code of dress to go to those polling stations. And then the other one is here. Okay, we are talking about giving money to politicians to campaign. When politicians are campaigning, are you ECN mostly monitoring how are they behave in the public? When like last time, there was a politician was being fight each other in the out of window. So what is the method that you can educate in this time that we must not have no violence, no other political party must at any violence against the citizens? Whosoever want to vote, let it go vote according to his own party by free and fair, not by force, not by any other means. Then my last point is that
thank you, sir. I think in the interest of time, I think let's deal with the questions that you've submitted. Thank you, sir. Yes, perhaps maybe we can deal with some of those questions and then go back, because I also wanted us to touch on the issue of deregistration versus cancellation and so forth.
Yeah, maybe to the question of Abdul. Well, the ECN is not a police. When it comes to political party, perhaps have an issue, or there's a violence out there because of the statements or perhaps the nature of politics, that has really nothing to do with ECN. There are other institutions that can deal with violence and what have you. But when it comes to issues that are within the parameter of the Electoral Commission of Namibia, and then we deal with them, but not issues that are outside our mandate. We have a mandate to deal with, and that is to direct, manage, and control elections.
What about the issue that pertains to the codes of conduct?
Yes. The code of conduct, whether the political party signed or not, in my respective view, a political party doesn't need to sign to agree to code of conduct. Code of conduct must be published, and once it has been published, every political party must adhere to the code of conduct. It must be a law that these are issues, or these are do and these are don't do issues.
Yes.
And once you have that, it's there to make sure that we all behave according to what is laid down there as a code of conduct.
Yes, but then who makes sure that these codes of conduct are adhered to? I think that is what I find, Mr. Andima.
Yes, no, speaking under correction, I'm not sure whether the ECN Act does make a specific provision for that, but
right.
I think being the watchdog, being the watchdog of the political parties and so on, should same come to the attention of ECN, and there is proper evidence, or I think they should have that minor or extensive investigation investigating power to confirm that, because remember, although not everything is specifically specified in the ECN Act, them being the watchdog, obviously they must have somehow control over it, or should it not yet be there, probably find a mechanism to make sure that that is complied with, because it will also be futile, or it will cause havoc if the ECN just, pull up their shoulders and say, no, sorry, that is not covered within our mandate. As I always respectfully say, that the judges says that, the law must be alive and must conform to certain unexpected situations. That should also be the same with ECN, be it to supplement or amend the Act to ensure that they cater also for such a complaints should they come in and have sufficient evidence.
Yes, the other thing that we spoke about, although we did not really go extensively about it, is the issue of awareness, but also as it speaks to one suggesting that perhaps it must be made part of the school curriculum and so forth. And Mr. Haufiku said, look, we have education officers of ECN around, but I think there is a perception out there that the ECN is vocal around the issues of election only on that specific election year. But what happens throughout the 5 years?
Yeah, or maybe it's the Namibian,
is it holiday throughout the 5 years?
Not ECN. Maybe it's the nation that is not interested in what you are doing.
Right.
Rather than the ECN not doing something.
Okay.
I can assure you, Daniel, throughout, year in and year out, we are doing what we are at best to do. The problem is the Namibian people only want to be active during election time.
Yes.
And then off-peak, they perhaps not interested. And then there is something that I want to maybe correct myself to say when it comes to the code of conduct.
Yes.
What I was trying to say is the code of conduct is applicable to registered political party and organizations and associations.
Right.
Now, anything that a registered political party or organization and association is doing contrary to what is provided in the law, of course, ECN will take a step against that particular individual who belongs to a political party.
Right.
But what I wanted to make it clear is that not just any Namibian who stood up and is speaking politics and then we must go after that. There are other, institutions that can deal with that particular person.
You must also prove that that particular individual was speaking on behalf of a political party.
Of course.
And also to the awareness.
Yes.
Really, with all due respect, yes. I also tend to agree with my friend and colleague here.
Right.
That sometimes we are, I don't know whether is it ignorance or is it laziness? Because most of the acts or legislations are automated. And it will only help if somebody stand up and say, okay, let me first of all Google what this act provides for. And then those issues that I do not understand, let me approach the education officers and so on. But then in the Namibian nation, we just like to sit back and want to be spoon-fed about everything. So if we are not lazy to read or do a bit of research and so on, even if this becomes part of the curriculum in schools and so on, you will only be given the bone. You have to add the flesh yourself to the bone. And if we are not ignorant to read and familiarize ourselves with what is expected of us, obviously then it will also serve no purpose.
Yes.
Yes, but it is all out there. Everything is automated.
What do you make of the fact that one would really have to wait for 5 years before they can register as voters? Is the process not supposed to be a continuous process, Mr. Andima?
I think, let me rather reserve my comment and pass it to my little friend and colleague and say what was the rationale behind it.
Yes,
because they put pressure at the last minute.
Honestly speaking, what we need to understand is this.
Yes.
The continuous registration is provided in the law. What I can then admit is just that we had no everything system in place, but of late we have done everything possible. We got the regional electoral office who are heading regions, all of our 14 regions.
Right.
And I can tell you that within a short period of time, perhaps after we have done with elections,
this year,
we might have the continuous registration up and running.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not that we do not want to do it. It's
That's
provided
some
in
good
the law.
news.
But obviously also, it is not guaranteed that the nation will stand up and come up for registration, because they will wait until the last minute and hope for an extension and an extension and extension.
Yes, of course, you are watching The Wheels of Justice. When we return, we will take a look at our customary jargon of the day. Yes, let's now have a look to the jargon of the day. Perhaps let's start with political party versus political organization. Mr. Aufiku.
Well, a political party, in my understanding, is a registered political party that is registered with the Electoral Commission of Namibia and is to participate and promote election in the entire country. Whereas when we are dealing with a political organization, can also make reference to an organization and association that are only limited to participate in the local authority, and that is where their registration and authorization ends. The political organization may not, an association, may not participate in any way apart from the jurisdiction of a local authority where they are registered for.
Right. Mr. Ndima, merger versus an alliance.
Yes. To simply put it, a merger is where two or more political parties come together and they match and they become one. They cease to exist independently. They become one. And when it comes to an alliance, it's a joint venture where each party exists on its own, on their own political party card and so on, but operating together as a joint venture for a common purpose.
Yes. Thank you so much, Leonard Friends, for sharing your expertise on the Wheels of Justice. Now you can catch a repeat of the Wheels of Justice that is on NBC National Radio, that is at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Whether or not the NEFF will be part of the ballot come Wednesday, the 27th day of November 2024, remains to be seen. In the meantime, the general registration of voters that kicked off at the start of June will come to an end in 2 weeks' time on the 1st of August 2024. We have hereby come to the end of tonight's proceedings. Have a safe and productive week. I'm Daniel Nadunya, and this session stands adjourned.